Hello, welcome to the LinkedIn Success Workshop. This is a three-part series, and we are doing the second part today around the power of story and how to use story to really attract your ideal prospects on LinkedIn. And if you've missed the last part of the workshop, don't worry, just sign up and I will send you the replay for all three. And next week we have another part. But today we are focusing on story. So let's get started. Hello, I am Charlene Tessier and the founder of Strength in Numbers, and I'm helping you to attract motivated prospects to your business using a unique combination of LinkedIn and live streaming. And today it's all about story. And I know some of you might be thinking, how am I going to incorporate story into sort of a business platform like LinkedIn? Is it even appropriate? And how can I actually use it in a way that's going to be very powerful and build these amazing connections with my audience? And I'm going to show you today a few worksheets and frameworks onto how you can do that in a very simple and easy way. Story. It is extremely powerful. And why are stories so powerful? Well, we are literally hardwires for stories, aren't we? Ever since we were little, we heard fairy tales. And as we were growing up, our parents and grandparents probably told us all kinds of amazing stories. And as we grew up and as we become into adulthood, stories just really enthrall us and captivate us. Whether it's movies or TV shows, stories is a way that we really love to get information and learn. And stories, they do something really key that any other kind of content doesn't really do. And what it does is, when we have stories, it evokes all kinds of emotions. It brings up different kinds of emotions, and it lets us know exactly what is happening. Great. Thanks for joining us, Paul. And if actually, I forgot to mention, if anybody has any comments while I'm doing the presentation, you're welcome to just drop those in, and I will be answering them more towards the end. So where was I? Yes, stories bring up all kinds of emotions, and when we incorporate these emotional components to our stories, it makes our stories much more memorable. And what it does, a great and a very good story not only has a lot of impact, but also it kind of improves and strengthens our brand's awareness. And stories also, of course, bring us together and help us build a relationship with those that are connected with us. They feel some sort of connection, because in the end, we want to support and do business with a person that we feel connected with and that we have an emotional kind of connection to. And when we use our stories in an appropriate way on LinkedIn, they can really help to do that. Now, I'm going to share with you my story and how I essentially began my online business journey. About 4 years ago, I actually had offline business. It was hyper local, and I really love having this kind of very localized business and on the ground. And then I gave birth to my daughter, and I decided to actually move my business online because I thought it would give me a lot more freedom and independence. And another thing happened, which sort of shoved me very aggressively into the online business world, was that I relocated from Vancouver, Canada, to Germany. And being in Germany, I wanted to keep my business running and service North Americans. And I could obviously only do that if it was online. And so for 2 years, I decided to really kind of use LinkedIn. I felt that that was the place my clients were, and it was the place that I would be able to attract prospects to me. And for 2 years, I tried all kinds of LinkedIn strategies. I tried direct messaging strategy. I tried a group. I tried all kinds of content strategy. And at the end of those 2 years, I was actually super disappointed. I had a cold list of 50 people, And I still had that same calls list of 50 people. I did not get further ahead. I had no new customers and I was super frustrated. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but you can let me know in the comments if you've tried a strategy and not really got any kind of success rate with it. Well, I decided that I wasn't going to give up and I wanted to really focus on what could work. And I actually started doubling down on things that I did see results in when I was doing certain activities on LinkedIn. If it worked, I doubled down more on that. And to my surprise, after a few months of doing that, I ended up with a direct message from a potential prospect. They asked me about my service offering and if I could actually help them. And I got on a discovery call with them and they became my first customer. And I was really, really shocked because this had never happened to me before. I had put in so much effort and time for over 2 years to not really get any result. And so I was really surprised that people were direct messaging me about my service offerings. And I thought because this happened just one time that this was just complete luck and I was just super lucky. But as I've been continually growing my business for the last 2 years, it wasn't luck. My list is growing every week in, week out, month in, month out. I'm bringing in new prospects. I get at least one direct message a month. And even if they're not a direct sort of a prospect for my business, I often get direct message for potential partners. And these new partnerships I've made have also led to more customers and sales. And it has been quite an amazing journey for me in online. And I'm going to share with you in this workshop how I use a LinkedIn content strategy in order to attract ideal clients to your business. And we are going to focus on how you can really use story and the power of story. And I'm going to show you in this workshop the 3 steps. First, how you get found on LinkedIn by your ideal prospects, how to target them, and then the third is how to attract them. First, getting found. Now, we assume that as soon as we hit that post and publish button, that everybody who is connected to us and following us is discovering our stuff every single day. That is not true. In fact, even if you are publishing every day and you are showing up on, of course, your connections and followers feed, they are doing something like, oh, sorry, it stopped. They are doing something like this every day. They are scrolling through their feed at a very breakneck speed. And we do this. I do this. We all do this. We scroll and we scroll and we scroll, and then we hover and we either stop or we continue on. And there are two things that every potential prospect or ideal client is kind of looking for very quickly when they are scanning their feed. The first thing is we often will stop for those we know or recognize. So it doesn't have to be a personal friend or even a deep connection. If it's somebody I follow and I've consumed their content in the past and I know like, oh, they're going to deliver something really interesting today, or they always deliver something very interesting, we recognize that. And so when as soon as we see their image and their name, we stop because it's a recognition. And so having that first impression, which we'll talk about in just a minute, is really important because we want to build that recognition that we become kind of like every time I see that person come on, I know they're going to deliver value and I want to essentially hover, stop, consume their content. The next way that we often get found is through shock value or surprise or unexpected GIF, something that kind of just catches our eye because we are scrolling really quickly. We maybe a the first line of the post is very provocative or controversial that stirs an emotion. And same with a picture or a GIF could stir an emotion. And when it does this, it causes us to have this kind of visceral reaction. And what do? We stop. And so, what we are doing when we are creating our posts, we really do need to create them in a way that they will evoke an emotion. And I actually should have shown you one that I saw just yesterday. This person I was following actually it made me stop. It just totally made me stop. He had this really old, I guess, an old movies, black and white movie, and it was just a GIF of a guy with the binoculars, and when he pulled them down, he had these super huge bug eyes. Of course, they were what do you call that, movie makeup. And he was just like, here's a tip, to be seen. And this little gif of this guy, this old movie with his huge bug eyes, just made me stop. And I don't usually stop, even though I am following him. A lot of his content is sort of on the technical side, which is one of my hobbies, but not necessarily something I'm always very interested in reading. But that day when I saw that, it made me stop. It was like, whoa, what is with this guy? What's with this image? And it created sort of a shock value and an emotional reaction that made me want to stop. So you want to think a little bit about that when we are creating content and posts. And even that can be done with the very first line of your post, which is always the most important line. It's the hook. We all spend a lot of time in the post, in the body, the part that's essentially 4 or 5 lines down, but that never gets seen if we can't really hook them. And we really got to hook them in that first line because we're scrolling really fast, right? So you have just a few seconds to really make this good impression, and to make an impression and create a reaction so that they will stop. Because what we really want is them to not only stop, but to then start to build a recognition of that they see you and they know you, and you're going to deliver value or a certain kind of value to them on a very regular basis, and that they will hopefully start to want to look more into your profile, even connect with you, maybe get to your lead magnet and things like that. So move more into your world, and that it all starts with the feed and getting them to first stop on the post. The next step is to target them. And this is really, really important because we often create our content and our posts where we are speaking to a very generalized audience, because we believe that a generalized audience is the way to go, especially if we believe that we're speaking B2B. And I speak to B2B, but always remember there is a person on the other end of that business who is the decision maker and the buyer. And you're speaking to the person. It's about relationships and people. And LinkedIn is about relationships and people. Business has been done that way before social media and before LinkedIn, and it will continue to be done that way. The tool that we just happen to be using is LinkedIn, but it's all about relationships and people. And this is why targeting and how we target is so key. And there are two very key and important things that we need to essentially be telling our potential prospect up front and center in our headline. And that is who it is you help, call it out. Even if it's another business, it can be a very specific example of a business. You're not just going to be helping, so for example, pet, um, let's just say pet stores, right? Maybe you're actually helping boutique dog uh, stores, dog pet stores, right? Maybe it's even boutique dog pet stores in your city, your geographical city and area. And that seems like, oh, that's overly niche, but it actually will speak to more people. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit more how that works in a minute. And what you want to say is, how do you solve their problem? So underneath your name, you have your headline and you have some space there to talk about who you are and who you help. And you might be thinking, is my headline really doing this? Is it shouting out or calling out to some very specific niche and group of industry and area? And is it really explaining how I solve their problem in a very concise and specific way? And of course, you probably do much, much more than that. But remember, they are on their feed. They're not spending a lot of time. We need to really grab them with that first sentence to bring them in, because our whole goal really with LinkedIn is to get customers. And we do that by, of course, having amazing content, having content that interests them, that attracts them. But our ultimate goal is to move them from the content, from the feed to our profile page so that they can direct message us, follow us, consume our lead magnet, et cetera, right? And we want to really not do this. This is one of the worst things you can probably do, which is make this kind of generic avatar. And I don't like avatar either because it's the word they always use. Who is the avatar? I can't imagine an avatar, to be honest. It's very difficult. And it's actually so generalistic that it speaks really to nobody. And when we have stories and content that we want to evoke emotion from, it's much easier when we use a audience member. And this audience member, this is my audience member. Her name is Amanda. She's actually kind of created from several characteristics and traits of my actual existing customers. And if you don't have currently that many existing customers, you may be able to use some of your market research to create your audience member. Or very often, how you help people is you were your past version of yourself is really essentially your customer, and that's who you are helping. But giving them a name and speaking to that person is the power of one instead of the power of many. And you will be surprised. It's much easier and more powerful to speak to a person. And so I know all the characteristics about Amanda. I know that she is a mother of two. She has two children, a boy and a girl. They are the age of 15 and 17, so they're older. She's had an online business for over 3 years. Right? So it's very specific. She isn't a range of, 35 to 50 years old. She's 41 years old, right? She's her children have a very specific age, how many years she's been in business. She's tried Facebook for many, many years. She has a Facebook group of 512 people, and even though these are not exactly the most, accurate things, having the specificity helps us to create very powerful content and stories. It's because we can then speak to very clearly to help Amanda and all of the problems and questions that she has. So, all the content I create is essentially answering all of the questions that she has. And you would be surprised if you think narrowing it down that much, you're going to have not enough to speak about. That is so untrue. And it will relate to many more people than you think, right? Um, my audience member happens to be chosen. I chose a woman, Amanda. I mean, I could make a second one and have a man, but I have male customers because many of the things that I speak about with Amanda do relate to male customers. They relate to actually customers that are not coaches. So it just really depends on who's consuming your content, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to worry about trying to fill the need for everybody. Fill the need for one really, really, really well, and you will be amazed at how big that is. And now we are going to start attracting our clients using stories. So we want to take them, of course, on a journey. A story is a journey. And I'm going to share with you a simple framework for a story. And to let you know, this framework was not designed by me, it was designed by my friend, who's also a story coach, Alex Owen Hill. And he actually created, I think, also for many other story coaches and story resources. And just to let you know, this is a simplified story framework or story arc. And it's not the hero's journey. And many of us have heard the hero's journey, and I've tried to apply the hero's journey, and I find it extremely difficult, especially in social media. It can be a little bit too much. And so the simplified framework really works well. And I'm going to show you an example of how to use it as well. I'm going to move myself. That might help. Sorry, I'm blocking the little bottom part, which just says once upon a time, and the bottom there, which is, of course, the start of the story. We always start at the very beginning. And as it begins, up on your left, I guess, it will be the first 10% of the story. There will be something that happens, an inciting incident. So often something happens in our lives and that kind of provokes or begins the change, right? But actually, what happens is we discover something and we learn a little bit more, and that actually then changes our plans. And it's actually where the real story begins at approximately 25%. Then at the point of no return, that's when we are starting to go through all of our obstacles and challenges and discoverings and learnings, and that's at the halfway point. And then at the 75% point of story, something major kind of happens. A major roadblock, obstacle, something causes us to really have to break through that in order to achieve our success or win or to have our transformation. And then at the very end, we have achieved that. That's the climax. Yay, we won. And then it ends like right away, because all of us, we really are very interested in the 25% to the sort of 75%. That's the big buildup of the story. And once we've kind of achieved it, we pretty much tune out and stop listening. So that's why it just ends so quickly there. And this has many points, and you could have many sentences for each point or many different, points for each of these 10. But you could also make a very simple story, which I love doing this with just one sentence for each of the areas. So at the inciting incident, one sentence. Change of plan, one sentence. Point of no return, that's where you got to keep on going. You're going to have to do it, right? One sentence. Major complication, one sentence. The climax, yay. And then, of course, one sentence. The end, of course, happy ending or whatnot. And so that is a very basic, simple story structure that you can use. And I'm going to show you how you can use it. There is another little tool that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use the simple story structure. I'm going to use it in an example in just a minute. And how I incorporate this into especially my live streams, but you can use this in a text-based post format as well, is I create a live stream with three parts, right? Three parts, sorry. There we go. What's your story? So the first part is the story. The second part, I'm sorry, I've got to move my hand over here, is then the lesson. So when we have a story, if you remember back when we were children, stories are created often to teach us something, teach us a lesson. And so we use the story to teach our audience a lesson. Maybe it's something you want them to take away from, right? The story kind of conveys that lesson to them, the importance of that lesson. And then the third thing you can show them is then example of the real world. How can they use the lesson in their actual business or whatever it is you are trying to teach them, essentially? And so you have the story, you have the lesson. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to move ahead. And then you have the example. And so I'm going to show you one of them that I did, which was I did a live stream about how Batman can actually teach us how to have more views, how to get more views to our live stream using Batman strategy. And the story I told was about how when I was very young, I am not as old as this Batman show, but we did actually, my brother and I watched it in syndicate. And of course, because back in the day when we didn't all have screens, we only had one television at home. And what do brothers and sisters do? They always fight over the program that's going to be watched because they're on at the same time, both of the cartoons. And I wanted Little Pony, and my little brother wanted, of course, Batman. And being the older sister, my mother always said to me that don't fight with your brother, let him have his way. Don't make him cry. And so I often ended up having to watch Batman. It wasn't so bad. I actually really enjoyed, and I learned a lot of funny things from this particular quite a bit older Batman series. Now, there was something that Batman always did. If you've ever watched it or if you've ever seen the Syndicate, and maybe you haven't, but at the end of every Batman episode, they always would say, they would have that open loop, give you that cliffhanger, but the most important thing they would always say is come back at that same bat time and the same bat channel. because we needed to be reminded when that show was on because they wanted, of course, more viewers. And if you always reminded them at the end, see you again at the same bat time, same bat channel, what would happen is next week, as you always watch that show at that same time on that same channel, it's almost ingrained. And if that day you happen to be doing something else partway through, I bet you 15 minutes through whatever you were doing, there was this little inkling in your brain like, I'm missing something. I should be doing something. There's something I always do. And then you might even remember same bat time, same bat channel. And that is the lesson that Batman has taught us. If you want to get more views to your live stream, is to inform your audience way in advance about the time and day that you are going to be live streaming. And you will actually have more views if you're giving them reminders by email and you always stream on the same day and same time. They will start to show up and get more views because they will know same bat time, same bat channel. So that is how Batman, a story that seems completely unrelated to live streaming views, can actually be turned into a lesson and example for your audience. And you can do the same. And many of the stories can either be pulled from your personal life, but can be also things that seemingly seem unrelated, can be interesting. And when the lesson of the story doesn't have to be directly your personal story or your client story, it can be even like I did the story about Batman, can be tied back to the example of what is it you want to teach, the example or the illustration that you want to really make about it in your business. And so that also generally makes your content a lot more interesting because people want to know, Batman, what does that got to do with live streaming, right? It just piques that interest and that emotion, and maybe they have a reaction to superheroes. They may enjoy them or not. Who knows? So far in this presentation, we've spoken about three areas: how to find, target, and attract clients using LinkedIn stories. And what you've learned so far is how your potential prospects find you, and that it's really key to have a clear audience member so that you can speak to them when you are creating your stories and your content. And I showed you just a very simple framework that you can use, as well as a very simple format, the story, lesson, and example format that you can build into your live streams, into even your written posts. And I believe that story uh, is something that can really stand out on LinkedIn. It's not, there isn't a lot of that, I find, as not as much as in, say, Facebook or even on Instagram. People feel that a little bit uncomfortable, possibly, with bringing story because they feel it's not business and professional. But I think if done in a professional way, story can really help you to stand out. And if you are on your LinkedIn journey and you would like to find out the journey, what you can do to get more clients, I invite you to a free LinkedIn roadmap success call with me, and we will map it out. There's no strings attached, no tricks. So please, if you would like that, let me know. Just hit me up with a DM and we can get that on the calendar. And thanks for the likes and thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, you can pop those down into the comments below. And as I stated, next week I have one more of the series workshop LinkedIn Success. And I hope you'll be joining me. And I look forward to seeing you then. And I'll just put up really quick. Thanks, Paul, for coming.